So the title of the piece is Zero Zero Mr. Mr. in Chiaroscuro. So it's part of portrait collages that I've been doing this last year. Well, to begin with, collages are a big part of my practice, and they're done usually in my research state. It's the first step for me to make associations, to associate the elements I'm working with. So these collages usually implicate like found material and images from magazines, images from books that have to do with like theater or architecture. So it's like an archival database that I collect and I use. And they involve various techniques like maskings and cuttings and removals and substitutions, which are every time a sort of like way for me to merge facts and fiction. And so the Mr. Mr. collages, they began last year, and they have become a site to make and unmake a persona.
Stephen Kane?
Yeah, I'm talking about Stephen Kane, actually. So they happen simultaneously to this script I wrote. It's a short essay / script. So this was published, it was a commission. Kura magazine asked me to do a project for them for their last issue that it's still on now. That's issue 12. Mm-hmm. And so it was very open. It had to be like this new project that could involve everything. So I was free to work with a curator or not. And so I decided to sort of like exhibit the work of another artist in that sense.
Beautiful idea.
Yeah. Also to sort of like begin what I think is a next step and an evolution to the scripts I've been writing for a while. So yeah, I wrote about Stephen Kane. It's partly facts and partly fiction, and for me, it's a sort of like persona that will communicate later on with other personas that I'm trying to create. So it's a sort of like first step to like first chapter to a bigger story. So it's a sort of like architectural film noir, you know, like a sort of like thing that involves this urban setting, this anti-hero and high contrasts and drama. It's not about heroes so much as the making of heroes and the unmaking of heroes. It's a beautiful and very important book. And I read it in a very kind of like, you know, I don't read it as a book. I read it more like I open it when I need it and I continue, or I open a different page. It's has a structure that is linear at the same time, separated in these chapters, which I find very interesting because I also separate my work in chapters. So it's a skeleton that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I saw this on your website, that your menu is as in chapters, and I really liked it, even though I didn't really understand immediately why. Or
because I kind of start to use these older works and I reappropriate my own works to make new ones or new settings for them. So for me, these are all elements that will lead one day, let's say, or this is my aim, to a single story. There is all these elements that I put on now and I try to evolve, like I arrive to evolve them up to a certain point, and then maybe 2 years later I will have the need to reuse them, so to the heroes and the settings will reappear in a different way, and they will create in the end all these chapters a single story with their heroes, with their narratives that will merge into a big, let's say, mythology thing.
Would you say that is very Greek of you, or is that?
Yes, definitely it is, I think. But I mean, it's also the way I position myself in it, because I kind of take, I see myself as almost an actor in it, and not only as a director or the writer of it. Because when I reappropriate my own work, there is a very kind of biographical note that is inserted, which I find interesting.
And then it doesn't surprise me that Orson Welles is probably a huge hero of yours.
It's a big, big reference. Not only his films that I adore, but his placement in his own movies, and the way he's auto-filming himself. All these, I mean, I've watched all these documentaries about him or his footage. I flew to Munich last year because they have the archive, his estate. It's in the Film Museum in Munich, and it's so interesting to watch. Yeah, he's a very big reference. Not only as a movie maker and a writer, but and as an actor, but as a persona. I actually write before the work.
Mm-hmm.
I have my work begins with writing.
Always?
Yes, always. It has always been like that.
Mm.
And my titles, for example, lead the work, or the scripts I write, because I sort of write for the work in a script form almost. Mm-hmm. It leads to the work. So for me, the work begins with words getting together. And then this helps me visualize everything, and the materials that I use, and everything begins from there. It's a component that it's partly visible. I mean, sometimes I make it visible. For example, it can be my press release, or it can be a sort of, I've written like interviews with sort of like these personas I'm making, and these are sometimes published, sometimes not, sometimes performed as well, and sometimes they're kept only for me. But sometimes they become actually part of the shows or the work.